Alright guys, I am going to show you how to do the very simple quality management plan. And I've tried to make this as simple as possible because this is often something that doesn't get done in projects. Usually because we overcomplicate things. First thing we overcomplicate is quality. We just assume that what we think is important is what someone else thinks important. And in the video quality versus grade, you'll actually see that whilst quality is subjective, grade is objective. So effectively in this quality management plan, we're going to illustrate grade. The grade or the degree to which we actually want to achieve. And we're going to take something that's ordinarily subjective into something that we can measure, we can identify whether we've actually met it or not met it. Let me start. And I'll give you a job. So what I want you to do is, this is the ground, and we're going to run a cable from point A to point B under the ground. So I want you to dig a hole. That's your job. Go and dig the trench from point A to point B. Go, off you go. Stop watching the video, get your shovel, start digging. Seriously, you're not digging? Okay. Hypothetically, the active version of you that went out there and started digging did a hole like this. And then you came back to me and said, look, I've done your hole. Great. And this is your hole. Am I happy with this hole? A lot of you are going, oh no, of course he's not happy, it's all wonky. You dug the hole, why is it wonky? Oh look, there were rocks over here and rocks over here, so I tried to go as deep as I could, but every time I hit a rock, it took ages. Right, okay, that's a decent explanation, right. Technically, I should be happy because I've just asked you to do something without defining what my requirements were. This is where the quality management plan comes in, because for one person, a trench is this. And I remember one project I did on the Solomon Islands. This was exactly what the trenches looked like. Every time they hit a rock, they went, okay, well, let's put the high HV cable a little bit higher. Probably not a cool thing. So what we want to do is make this very objective. How do we make things objective? We use numbers, we quantify things, we say what we actually want to occur. And if you put some thought to it, you'll find that most things, even digging a trench, can be objective. So let's start. So the first thing I look at is a deliverable, which I'm going to say, what's the item that I'm focusing on? And the item here is going to be my trench, which we know goes to point A to point B, which has been marked. Right? Now, what criteria am I going to use to identify whether this has actually met my requirements? And this would be my quality criteria. If there's a standard, that's what we would use there. We would look at the applicable standard. So if it needs to be 300 mil underground, that's what we would use, a standard. 300 mil below ground level. If there's a capacity for a tolerance which is acceptable, put that in, plus or minus 20 mil. I do realise that this would actually make it non-conforming if that was the real standard, but make this fit what your intentions are. If there's no acceptable tolerance, no acceptable tolerance, that's it. It needs to be 300 mil exactly. Now, what comes next? That's the depth, I guess. So trench, I'm going to measure that it's 300 mil deep. You can put a lot of other things in there, so possibly the width, whether it's going to be reinforced, what you're going to do with it, but I've just gone depth. Let's put some width in there. It also needs to be 300 millimeters wide. Great, that's my criteria. The next thing is, how am I actually going to make sure this is occurring? So what method am I going to use to inspect this? Because part of quality management is quality control. So we need to make sure that we can actually measure this to make sure it's actually doable. So inspection method will probably be a physical measure. I'll actually get a tape measure and measure the depth of that hole. How often am I going to do this? Am I going to do it every 10 seconds, every 2 minutes. How often am I going to do it? So now we look at the frequency. It could be a one-off event, or for this one, I'm actually going to measure every 10 metres, just to make sure that it conforms. The more you increase this, the greater the cost, but you reduce the chance of failure. And just to make sure it gets done, I'm going to make someone accountable to make sure that this measurement occurs, and we'll make that the project manager. I like to make the person who inspects it a different person than the person who's actually done the work. It's just like scuba diving. The buddy system works out quite well. And you can do this with all the aspects in your work breakdown structure. Anything that you can quantify, I think you should quantify, just to make sure you've got parity, you've got that line in the sand, and then you can objectively look at it and say, has that work performance met the standard that I want? Great. Hope this very simple quality management plan helps you out. If you're struggling with anything, so if you've got a topic and you say, look, I'm painting a room, how do I quantify paint colour? I'll explain that. I mean, there's swatches, there's numeric codes for each paint colour. Basically everything is measurable. Our little brain just says, oh no, they'll work it out. But often, they don't work it out, or we don't work it out. So don't be the problem, and make sure you communicate your implicit requirements if they're important. Thank you.